Now, as Canada's economic and trade relationship with the U.S. changes, we've seen a new focus from the federal government on what they call nation-building projects, things like mines, transmission projects, economic corridors, maybe perhaps one day a new bitumen pipeline to the West Coast. Now, the workforce needed to pull off this strategy of nation-building projects is the subject of a talk tomorrow in Calgary at the Eco Impact Conference. Noel Baldwin is the executive director of the Future Skills Centre, focused on preparing Canadians for a changing landscape when it comes to work. Noel joins us this morning in studio. So this focus on a nation-building economy, how do you look at that from a workforce perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly represents a change in the way that you described it, right? Where we're thinking about a lot more of the relationships east-west across provinces and territories, how governments and communities and business and workers can come together to build up infrastructure and projects in Canada that are going to make us more sovereign and self-sustaining. And so in that sense, that shift is the result of what's been going on around us in the world and in the U.S. But it's a big opportunity, I think, to make sure that we are preparing a workforce to accomplish these really big ambitions.
Okay, what's the opportunity? And I mean, opportunity, challenges, gaps when it comes to the workforce to meet the moment.
Yeah, well, a lot of what we would need to do in the way that the federal government is thinking about these major projects is we've got to build stuff, right? And we had already had some pretty big ambitions to build things. We wanted to build a lot of new housing. We wanted to build out new energy sources and strengthen our electricity grid. So one of the things that I think will be a big focus in the coming years is around the kind of skilled tradespeople that we need to do a lot of these projects, but also how to think about the communities in which they're going to happen, because a whole bunch of these projects are going to happen not in downtown Calgary. Places like Calgary are going to have a strong interest in them, but they're going to be in smaller communities and more remote communities. And so we've got to build the capacity in those communities, both to have the people to contribute as well as to get some of the economic benefit out of it too. We don't want that to be kind of transactional in that way. And especially, your experience in the North would tell you that doing that in northern communities is particularly important and also takes some real intentionality about it.
We have a challenge, across the country. We've done a bunch of reporting and research into it here in Alberta and in Calgary around youth unemployment, big struggle. What is the timeline that you're thinking about, or what's in the background when you're talking about meeting this nation-building moment in the North across the country? But how much of this is talking about the next year? How much of this is thinking about 10 and 15 years?
No, I think this is a long-term play, right? And what the federal government has signaled is that they want to get these projects going quickly. They want to shrink the time for the regulatory processes, not necessarily to make them less rigorous, but to make them go quicker so that they can get shovels in the ground. But then big projects like this, they take years to get going and to complete. And so in that sense, I think there is a really interesting connection to what's happening with youth. Youth are being hit by at least three things at once, right? There's kind of a softened general economic outlook because of what's happening with tariffs, and that always impacts youth first. So you see unemployment rates that are kind of twice the national average. That ratio is not that different, but I think underpinning it is a little bit. And there's the impact of technology, right? Early results on the adoption of AI seem to be hollowing out some entry-level jobs. And then there's the long tail of COVID, where people didn't get the same kind of learning and work experience early on as they were kind of moving through school. So all that's kind of putting a lot of pressure on young people. But the nation-building moment, right? This idea that we can link a lot of this work to a real values-based perspective, right? A real moment of trying to build up a country, I think is something that represents an opportunity to connect with youth. A lot of what we have learned about younger generations and their view of work is that purpose and meaning is really important, that yes, they want to be paid well. They want to have a good standard of living, but they're also looking for something that I think is a little more significant, a little deeper in terms of how they invest their time and where they want to put their efforts. So I think that there's a really important moment to tie these things together for young people to understand that on some of these projects, I mean, these could be generational jobs, and really important to try to connect them into that as early as possible.
Yeah. Skill building then is where you're at?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of what we're focused on, right? So how do we help people move through what can be a period of their life that's really hard to navigate? So how do we make sure they've got good information about where jobs are at today and where they're going to be tomorrow, and what kind of education and training pathways take them there? And then really critically, and this is something that we've seen a lot, is we've got good infrastructure for the formal education part of our skill pipeline. We actually have at least a reasonable amount of programming. When people get dislocated from a job through EI, you can do training. But a lot of where people, I think, end up stuck is kind of mid-career, where they're in a role, but they either see disruption coming or they are looking for a change. And then the resources are less obvious where to find them and how to access them. And Canadians do that, kind of accessing those resources at much lower rates than people in other countries. So there's work to do there to help kind of guide people through that. And again, the nation building moment is an opportunity to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Knowing what you know about Calgary and Alberta, like what is our place in this? Let's focus on Calgary. I mean, historically, oil and gas town, there's obviously some diversification of the local economy and what's going on. Lots of people ready to work in Alberta. What's the role for people here?
I mean, I think historically the energy sector, oil and gas and others, has been a real source of productivity, where as a sector there is a regular focus on how to do the work that's in front of them in a way that is faster and more efficient. And I think there's obviously new opportunities on the horizon around hydrogen energy, around carbon capture and storage, that are going to build up new sectors in the province. One of the things that I think it has been interesting in our observation is Calgary also has a really strong ethos of people coming together to try to solve problems. So we've done work in partnership with Calgary Economic Development, for example, where they've brought 6 or 7 post-secondary institutions to the table with employers in the city and the region. And we've been able to partner with them where they're developing local solutions to try to get the talent into the local labor market that employers are looking for. And that's really powerful. Having people who can be honest brokers and get people around the table to start talking about solutions is one of the most powerful ways we've seen to start to make that kind of change around skill and workforce development. So Calgary's got a lot of strengths in that respect.